See you.
Hey, Mac.
Hi, Mr. Cricket Man. And the other cricket man, we've got Tony. You all right?
Hi, guys. Yes, well, thank
Good,
you.
good to see you. So, can't believe it. It's happening. And there's obviously football on tonight, but this Thursday, county cricket starts again. Can you believe it? It's freezing in the UK, but the sun's out, so I suppose people will still want to go out and watch it. And then on Friday, the exciting, the crown jewel of T20 of the short form of the game. It's the IPL. So, Steve and Tony, I'll leave over to you. Let us know what's going on as a fan.
Cheers, Mac. Well, evening, Tony. How are you, mate? All right?
Evening. Yeah, grand, Steve. Thanks. And yourself?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Not too bad. I've been having a week where I've got my head right into the IPL, Tony.
Ooh.
So I'm really excited to talk to you about that this evening. I think it is a great tournament, and I like you. I've kind of come to terms with the T20 form of the game as the newer form of the game, and certainly there is plenty to enjoy in watching T20 cricket. And we've spoken to Mac in the past about how it's his as somebody who's not steeped in cricket for it's his favourite form of the game. So definitely the preeminent tournament in the world, I think, and with the World T20 sort of World Cup in India later this year as well, I think it's the perfect platform for players to show that they can do well for their country in the IPL in the T20 World Cup. So lots riding on this, and I think it's been really interesting looking through the teams and looking to see how they've built their squads and the kind of strengths and weaknesses of them. But before we talk about some of the different teams, what's your take on the IPL, Tony? Are you a fan? Do you settle down with a cup of tea and watch a game? Or
I have to say I wasn't, but I am now a convert. I find that the first thing that attracted me, the franchise system. I think that's a very, very good idea. They've also restricted it, I think, to the development in the advantage of the development of the Indian players, because you can only have 4 foreigners in the team at the one time, so that at least they're getting 7 locals, if you like, in the team. And without doubt, they're producing good wickets and they are producing exciting, entertaining cricket. And I have to say, above all, the fielding has been magnificent, absolutely magnificent. Some of the boundary fielding, the catches and throwbacks to make a catch to the guy who's infield, and they're leaping up and knocking the ball back. It's just moved things into a complete new universe as far as fielding is concerned.
Yeah, I agree.
And the last thing I would say is, whoever is manufacturing the bats these days, I don't know what they're putting in them. Are they pure willow? They must have springs inside the center of them, I think, because the ball is going like a trajectile for miles.
Yeah,
but it's entertaining and it's good stroke play.
Yeah. I think when I last had a bat in the middle somewhere, the edge of my bat was probably 3/4 of an inch. I think these days the edge of the bat's about as big as the blade of a bat I would have used as a kid.
That's correct. Yeah.
So big bats. But you're right as well. The fielding, the difference it has made. The IPL, the Big Bash, and all the T20 cricket has made with fielding. Nowadays, you regularly see those very, very clever flickbacks from the boundary, and people catching them on the sort of second fielder catching them, or people taking really, really spectacular boundary catches. And that's been as an advent of T20 cricket, what's been possible.
And the throwing from the deep has been phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant, absolutely great. Yeah, and I like your point about the number of overseas players. They obviously have a number of them in the squad, but only so many can play at once.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting, and there's a kind of, if you like, a feeder a T20 trophy in India called the Syed Mushtaq Ali Trophy, and in my looking at, I wrote an article this week which is published on Medium, looking in some detail at each of the squads, and it was really interesting. I did that based on their performances in the previous 3 IPLs, in the Big Bash, because there's about 23 players who played in the Big Bash that will be in the IPL as well, T20 internationals, but I also included the Syed Mushtaq Ali Trophy, to get the data for the perhaps the non-international Indian players that maybe hadn't played in the IPL before, hadn't played very much, and it was really interesting. There were some terrific performances there, and I really think some of the franchises have been really smart about some of the players that they've recruited from on the strength of good performances in that trophy. So I think there's going to be some new names that will come through from that if they manage to get game time, which is always the challenge when you're in these very competitive squads. But certainly for me, when I looked at the different squads, there were two teams that stood out for me as being probably the most exciting teams. That was the team formerly known as the.
I've got three, so it would be interesting to see the compares.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, and formerly known as Kings 11 Punjab, the Punjab Kings this season, I think look like a really, really strong team. Probably the iconic T20 player in Chris Gale is playing. David Malan, who we've spoken about a lot on Sports Fans TV, was the #1 international T20 batsman in the world and a very good player. KL Rahul, I think, is their captain. Good. He's had an excellent white ball series against England very recently for India. Chris Jordan, who I know we both like as a really good go-to player, and I think probably the coming Australian paceman Jay Richardson, who again, some of these guys are not necessarily the biggest names. I mean, Chris Gale is, but the other guys are not necessarily the biggest names in world cricket. But they're certainly, I think, the signs there are very intelligent recruitment. When I lifted the bonnet on the form, if you like, of these guys in those 6 tournaments or 5 tournaments in international cricket that I'd looked at, these guys all were pretty strong performers. All round, the Punjab Kings have got good batsmen and good bowlers that really make a good T20 contribution. I don't think they've gone for the marquee players. They've gone for the players that they think can make a difference.
Yeah, they've got Sharmi, and they've got a young fellow, Mandrella, I think his name is, a very promising young player playing for them too. And I don't know how to pronounce it, Agarwal as well.
Agarwal,
and Pooran, the West Indian captain, he was, and a wicket keeper as well. A very, very promising player as well. In fact, they've got an abundance of wicket keepers because they've got a young Indian, Singh, who's a wicket keeper as well.
Yeah. No, they've got some very good players in the squad, and there's a guy talking about somebody who may break through from the domestic game, who I like the look of, and he looks like he's got a lot to offer. Is a chap called Jalai Saxena, who's a bowler who looks like he's got quite a lot about him as well, and I thought he looked like a potentially a name to watch if he can get a game. I thought he looked really good.
Yeah.
He did very well in the recent domestic tournament. Did very well. 10 wickets average at under 12. Strike rate of taking the wicket every 11 balls or something. So he looks pretty good. Somebody else who's good in that squad is Moises Henriquez as well. Australian player. He's one of those players again.
His name, I must admit, he's passed me by.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that's in and around the Australian white ball squad, and I think he probably has played some Test cricket as well. I'd need to check, but he's one of those guys that's, when you're in that group as an Australian, you're going to be a pretty good player. So all round, I looked at the Punjab Kings squad, and I thought, well, that's some players there. And when I looked at the underlying performances, I thought this is a squad that knows how to management that knows how to build a squad. So I was very impressed. And the other team I've got, sorry,
I had them at number 3. They were my third choice. I just thought they just came up short, because I think maybe Gale, so good, sooner or later he's got to come to an end. And other than him, I don't know that they have what I would call it as a leader. I was looking for leaders in that team, and I couldn't see leaders. I could see a lot of promising youngsters, a few mature players, certainly Milan and Chris Jordan from the English point of view, but I could see a lot of leaders there. So that's why they came third in my picks.
Yeah, I think that's a bit harsh on Rahul myself. I think he's an experienced player, and I think he will. He will. he's in a very strong group of players in the Indian national team.
Yes. But my point about Gale is Gale will stand there, and I don't know that apart from if he scores big scores, that's fair enough. But I don't think other than that he will contribute in a team setting. I think he's so iconic that it's Gale or Gale.
Yeah.
But anyway,
maybe. Yeah, but a good team nonetheless.
Oh yes,
the other team,
they made my top 3.
Yeah, the other team I think look really exciting is the Sunrisers Hyderabad. I think this looks like a really exciting team. David Warner's a captain. They've got Johnny Burstow, Jason Roy, who's replaced Mitch Marsh in the squad, Kane Williamson, Jason Holder. So really good experience. Talking about leaders, you've got a couple of captains and former captains there. Bhuvi Kumar in the pace attack. They've also got Rashid Khan, Mujib Rahman.
Virat.
They've got Virat Khan, I think it is, in their side. Yeah, not Virat Kohli. He's in Bangalore.
No. Sorry, I meant Khan. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's the other fellow? Rashid Khan, is it?
Rashid Khan. They've got yeah. And I think he's. I mean, obviously, as you'll know, I think he's a wonderful player, and he really is one of the bowlers to watch.
Yadav, of course.
Yep. They've got Yadav and Natarajan as well, who played in the white ball games for India. Very good Yorker bowler, can bowl at the death and so on. When I looked at this squad, and I thought, wow, these guys have really built a very, very good squad. These are T20 performers in this squad,
they're mature as well.
Yeah, and I actually was thinking about that batting lineup. If you can have, Warner, Roy, Bairstow, Williamson, that's pretty amazing. Even if one of them misses out, if they want to play Holder or Rashid Khan, there's some terrific players there, and I think they've got an awful lot. And if I was going to get suckered into supporting one of the teams this year, when I had a look at that squad, for me it was probably the Sunrisers that were probably the most exciting team in the team.
We're on the same wavelength. They were my number 2. I thought they will get to the final.
Yeah. I think they've got a good chance of getting to the final. So who's your number 1 team then, Tony?
Well, a bit of a surprise packet.
Yeah.
I went for a team that has some very promising Indian players in it.
Mm-hmm.
A team that I consider they're young, but they're hungry, and it's the Delhi team, led by Pant.
Yeah,
and they got Steve Smith, and they got Rahane and Dhawan, and they've got Billings, and they've got Axel Patel and Ashwin. They've got my hero Rabada. They've got Ishant
Sharma, yeah.
And they've got the fellow that I think personally everybody should keep an eye on this year. And that's the the other South African speedster, Nortje, or I don't know how you would pronounce it. Then they've got Stoinis, they've got Tom Curran as a thing, they've got Umar Yadav, and I think they've got a sprinkling of experience. They've got a lot of young promising Indians. I think they're hungry, and I've got them as my out. I know it's a bit of a long shot, but I think that they'll perform very well. So they made my top. So Delhi, the Sunrisers, and the Punjab Kings were my top 3.
Yeah, I have to say when I looked at Delhi's T20 form, it was good. But my observation was, if you were playing this team in a Test match, they'd look almost unbeatable. But playing them in T20, I wasn't so sure. I think there are some good players there. Pant obviously can play in any format of the game. Steve Smith, but Steve Smith's T20 record isn't stunning. I mean, it's not bad, but it's not stunning. He was quite inexpensive, interestingly. I think he left his previous franchise last season and was picked up for a relatively light contract this time. I mean, all things are relative, but he's not going for the sort of mega money that you would expect one of the great Test players to go for. So a smart recruitment, that's for sure. Axar Patel, I think, has just been diagnosed with COVID. I think he's just tested for COVID.
Oh, has he really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's unlikely to play, I think, in the first few games.
Oh,
but yeah,
that's unfortunate.
certainly you can't discount a team with that quality in it, and Ashwin as well, bowling and so on. I think I have them as a possible to get through to the knockout stages.
Yeah.
I think it's possible. I'm not as high on them as you are, Tony, but I think
clearly
they're a very talented team, and you can't write them off.
I think they're the type of team, once they get on a roll, and I think they will get on a roll, they will be fearless, their youth. And I think it's a developing team. I accept your point about some of them haven't performed greatly in the last couple of years, but I think they're developing, and I think they'll produce the goods for me anyway.
Yeah, good stuff. So that, I think, takes me talking of teams that have been constructed around players who are great test players, and I'm not sure about them. Royal Challengers Bangalore, Virat Kohli's team.
Yes.
In my article, I've likened them to Real Madrid in their Galacticos era, the Zidans and Pavons, as they used to call it. You'd have these megastars, and then you'd have these journeyman's unkind on Pavon, and certainly unkind on the RCB players. But the less heralded players would fill in, would fill in the squad, and in fact, a lot of the RCB squad appeared to come from the local game. They spent a lot of their money, most of their money on batsmen went on Kohli, who's the most expensive contract in the tournament, and AB de Villiers.
Yes,
now, wonderful player. Can do everything. Although I'm not sure I'd let him open the bowling, but he can pretty much do everything else. You could probably drop him into almost any sport and he'd be good at it. He's in his late 30s, but he's certainly still able to play T20.
But he might be suffering from a little bit of rustiness too. He's not playing regularly.
No. But they really do. Sorry, Tony, go on.
So I regarded them a team of slightly older men. It's a shame that they've missed out on Glenn Maxwell, I think, haven't they? I think has he gone from them now, or am I wrong there?
I've still got Maxwell in the squad.
Then I heard that he had pulled out, but I'm wrong. But anyway, in any event, I think what will let them down is their bowling. I don't think their bowling is strong enough or deep enough, and they haven't got any pacemen of what I would call of merit anyway. So I think they would buy
Kane Richardson's not a bad bowler, and they've got Mohamed Siraj as well.
And Adam
interestingly,
is not bad, but
Zampa's a good leg spinner. I had a couple of observations about their bowling attack. First is they've spent quite a lot of money on Kyle Jamieson, the very large Kiwi fast bowler. Now he has got really no metrics and data that suggested that was a good.
It could be anything.
He's clearly a very talented player, and it's a bit of a roll of the dice. But clearly he's talented, and he may well be a breakout T20 tournament for him. The other thing I was going to say was they've got Maxwell, and they've got YS Chahal, the Indian leg spinner, but they've also got Dan Christian, and they've got Adam Zampa. Now both of those guys profile very, very similar to Maxwell and Chahal. I mean, in terms of the performances are very, very similar, but they're a fraction of the price of those two guys. They spent big on Maxwell and Chahal, and yet also recruited, if you like, the smart money versions of both of those players. And I thought that was a really unusual thing to do. And it kind of said to me that this was a team that knew how to spot value in a player, knew how to spot somebody who they could get on a reasonably priced contract who was going to give them a good level of performance, but they also got slightly distracted by the shiny things and went for the big names. And there's a little bit of a Zidans and the Pavons going on here.
Well, I think there's too much of a gap between the haves and the have-nots in the team. They need too many of the have-nots to come through, in my mind, to shut. Yeah, that's not to say they won't come through, but they need several of them to come through.
Yeah,
I the depth.
Yeah, I said in my article that I thought that it was a bit of a high wire act for RCB, because if Kohli and de Villiers have great tournaments, it will look like, well, you've picked the best players and you're going to have the best team. But if they don't fire, or they're good but not great, then it could mean that the Royal Challengers struggle a little. I thought that was interesting. But Tony, you mentioned something there that they might profile a little old. Well, one team I thought definitely profiled old was the Chennai Super Kings.
Oh, Dhoni.
Led by Dhoni.
I don't know.
Yeah, led by Dhoni. Also, who else did they have in their team? They've got Imran Tahir in their team, who's in his 40s. They've got, I think I made nearly half of their squad.
Yeah, he's getting on a bit too now.
Yeah. Faf du Plessis was probably their leading batsman, and they really all seem to be, all getting on a bit, frankly.
And they paid a lot of money for Moen. I mean,
they paid a lot of money for Moen.
Yeah, I can't. Okay, I know he's got a very good record in the IPL, but I can't see him in that. I think it's the weakest team in the. Oh, what the heck?
Yeah, interesting. So I wouldn't say they were the weakest team. I think there's a couple of teams we've yet to mention. I think possibly have may struggle actually. But I did look at the team and think, and actually when I looked at their kind of collective metrics, they were just a little bit short of runs, and a little bit. And didn't take wickets quite quickly enough, but mainly with the batting, they were a little bit short of runs. And I thought what that told me was they were batting at a rate that would have been a very good team about 7 or 8 years ago, 6-7 years ago, maybe. That's when a lot of the guys in this team would have been at their peak. And I just wondered if perhaps time had left them behind a little bit.
And their spinners would need very friendly wickets.
Yeah, the spinners may need friendly wickets. But yeah, good players. They could come through. But I thought they profiled a little old and were possibly, dare I say it, a little out of time, and might get overtaken by teams with a slightly younger profile in this series. So I've got a couple of folk watching. Please feel free to chip in with chat messages and questions if you think we've read any of these squads wrong, or we've overlooked a crucial component of any of them, or you disagree and you're a massive Chennai Super Kings fan and you want to tell us that you're going to sweep the boards, then please chip in with your messages. But Tony, another team I think are quite good and I actually think could do very well are the Mumbai Indians. They've got the Pandya brothers in their team. They've got Rohit Sharma leads them, who I think is a fantastic player. Quinton de Kock, who'll be looking forward to just playing cricket and not captaining. SK Yadav, who did very, very well in the recent white ball game. They've got Chris Lynn, who I think is a very smart signing. Again, when I looked at the rate of his contract and the amount of his contribution and the quality of his contribution, he looked like a real steal for the money that he was signed for, and I thought he looked like probably the smartest signing or one of the smartest signings across all the franchises in the IPL. They've got Bumrah, they've got Nathan Coulter-Nile, the experienced Australian fast bowler. I think they look like a well-rounded team to me, and I think they could do well. Again, not necessarily always the biggest and brightest names in the tournament, but certainly a lot of quality there. And I thought they looked like they would and could do very well. What do you make of the Mumbai Indians, Tony?
Well, I think they're what I call a good second division team. Lynn, I looked at him. He's 31. He's got 13 wickets at 31 as well. A strike rate is a good strike rate. 140 is his strike rate. I don't know. I wonder, has he the experience yet for it? I just have a feeling that the likes of him will be overwhelming. Bumrah burst on the scene, was very promising, but whether through injuries or whether people have worked him out, I don't think that Bumrah is quite the threat that he was. And I think, although he has the pace, having seen Wood go around the park recently against India, and he's got plenty of pace, I just don't think they're strong enough, to be honest. I think they depend on Rohit, all right, and Pollard possibly is another possibility who could shine for them. But Coulter-Nile, for instance, I'm not overstruck with him. No, not sure.
You're not a fan of him. You're not a fan of him.
I have to say he's got it all to do, in my opinion.
Well, I think he profiled very well with the data I looked at, as did Trent Bolt as well. Who's in the squad.
Trent Bolt is different. Yes, he's proven, but
yeah.
Trent Boult, I think, does better on what should we say, damper wickets. I don't think that maybe, of course, he could do well in the evening, but I don't know that India is quite the place for Boult.
Yeah, I think they've got a couple of good Indian spinners as well. Rahul Chahar, I think, looked really good. He had a great kind of local T20 tournament, the Syed Mushtaq Ali Trophy. Took a wicket every 11 balls, going at just over 6 and over, and he was pretty inexpensive. And also there's an off spinner called Jayant Yadav, who again a very light contract. And he profiles very, very well. He does really well.
There's quite a step up to the IPL from that league that you're talking about. And pressure does a lot of things to players, and to my mind, there's too many people have got to step up in that team. One or two of them may, but I think too many have to.
Oh, well, I'm a bit hotter on the Mumbai Indians.
Yeah, I wouldn't have them. In my last, I certainly don't think they'll get to the semis anyway.
No, well, I think they will. I think they'll qualify. So we'll see.
Right, we shall see. Interesting.
So it leaves us with two teams, and there's quite a lot of English interest in these last two teams. First of all, let's talk about our mate Owen Morgan and Kolkata Knight Riders.
Oh yes.
I really worry for this squad. I think this looks thin. I think Morgan's a wonderful white ball captain. I call him the white ball Brilli in the article. But I think he contributes more as individually than Brilli ever did. But I think he's going to have a lot to do. He's going to have to weave some magic in the field.
And Gill, for instance, he's in it. He's out of form, and a lot depends upon batting wise on Kartik and Morgan, I think. And if they don't come, I agree with you, Steve. I think there'll be if you were looking at a league, they would be relegation fodder.
I think so, yeah. Andre Russell looks a good player. Sunil Narine is a good player, but they've got quite a lot of players that score quite aggressively, but don't score that big, or don't always score that big.
That's the Morgan way, of course. But
it is.
And in the IPL, long innings are not necessarily needed. It's quick. If you've got quite a few players who can score rapid 20-30s, then that's maybe what's needed. But I still don't think they've got enough.
They profile more as guys who score a rapid 15 to 20, unfortunately. It's not quite the same. But again, all these teams are good teams. They've got good players. It wouldn't be the most outrageous thing in the world.
Without doubt, it's the strongest league in the world. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
And I'm not sure if I mentioned him. Their bowling attack will probably be led by Pat Cummins, who obviously is a good bowler. But again, his T20 bowling isn't quite at the level that you would expect of somebody with such a vaunted Test career.
If you look at Cummins, he needs a few overs to get into himself. It's almost as if he needs to go out into the nets before the game and bowl about 10 overs and then come out. And I think that's maybe he needs too long to warm up, and that's why he doesn't do quite as well.
Yeah. So, and the final team to talk about, who I don't think look like they've got a huge amount, is the Rajasthan Royals. And that's a shame, because they've got players that we really like. They've got Ben Stokes. They've got Josh Butler, who I think is one of the signings of the tournament as well. His contract is pretty reasonable for IPL terms, and he looks like a terrific T20 player. And Liam Livingstone, who we know is a good batsman and has a bit of a golden arm. But I looked at the squad and I couldn't see a lot else. They also spent very, very big on Chris Morris, the all-rounder, and I looked at his
nothing
numbers.
To recommend him. 33, and his I think he gets his wickets at a high economic rate. I don't think he's good enough, to be honest. And they have very few local players of any caliber. That's the important thing. If they're going to have to play their foreigners all the time, and their foreigners have got to come off and carry the team, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
The weak team.
Yeah.
Allowing for the fact they will score runs, without doubt. I can't see the likes of Stokes and Butler not scoring runs, but I don't think they're strong enough.
No, I agree, and I also thought it was a little bit. It must be difficult. It must be a lot of pressure on Chris Morris to do well, and not only has he got to do well, he's got to do well in the same team as Ben Stokes. I think if the Rajasthan Royals had spent that kind of money on Stokes and said forget his numbers, because the Stokes numbers actually aren't terrific, they don't stand out as you'd expect them to. But it's Ben Stokes. He brings marquee, he brings box office, he brings the ability to play in under pressure,
And he
all of
brings
those things.
intimidation. He brings
Yeah,
intimidation.
yeah. I'm not sure you get any of that with Morris.
He has a fear aspect. The opposition fear him.
Yeah.
But Morris, I mean, I can't. Well, when I saw how much they paid for him, I was flabbergasted. I thought, what? Who is this guy? I mean, he's nowhere near any team of the Australians or the South Africans.
I agree, and I mean, I hope he does well, but he's going to have to do stunningly well to look like good value for money, and I think that's a really difficult position to put him in. So there we go. That's all the franchises. For me, I think that it will be the Punjab Kings, the Mumbai Indians, Sunrisers Hyderabad, and probably Virat's strength of personality that gets the Royal Challengers through to the knockout stages. I think you've got a slightly different list to me, Tony.
Well, I for brevity's sake, I knocked it down to the three. I think that Delhi and Sunrisers will play the final, and the Punjab Kings will give whoever they play in the semis a battle. That they're to my mind. I've gone for the youngsters. I've gone for the people, and they've got a strong bowling and an adequate batting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good stuff. Well, let's see.
I repeat, look out for Nortje. I think Nortje could be the surprise packet in the IPL this year.
Good stuff. Brilliant. Well, that's the IPL. We'll chuck it through Sports Fans TV Cricket Fan Show as we go. We always like to keep tabs on how the players are doing, particularly the big name English players, but also be really interesting to see if the teams kind of pan out as we think they might, and if we think that they're going to behave as we think they are. Are Chennai Super Kings going to bat a little bit below par? Are the Mumbai Indians going to be well balanced? Are the Delhi Capitals going to be there? Are the Sunrisers Hyderabad going to be as exciting as they look on paper? Maybe if they can't get all of those international players on the pitch at once, it becomes a difficult squad balancing issue. Who knows? But lots to talk about. So if you've got questions or comments on it, please put them in the chat. But as maybe anyone who wants to do that, the other big tournament that's close to our hearts, which is starting this week, tomorrow, in fact, as Max said at the top of the show, is the County Championship. Divided into divisions, sort of seeded for the time being. Interesting time of year to start. It's been snowing in England this week, so it was a wonderful picture of Derby's ground yesterday, covered in snow, or certainly a heavy frost. With them sort of saying, the county championship starts in a couple of days. So it's going to be interesting. There was a photo of Ollie Pope as well, fielding, I think, in 3 shirts, 2 jumpers and a bobble hat the other day as well. So obviously the counties have been playing warm-up games. What are your thoughts on the county championship, Tony? What are you looking forward to?
Well, first of all, the organisation, I'm quite pleased with the organisation. They have taken the success of the Bob Willis situation, and they have gone for some local derbies where possible in the 3 groups. For anybody who doesn't realise, there are 3 groups of 6 in the first round, and the top 2 go forward into a Division 1, and the 3rd and the 4th go forward into a Division 2, and the 5th and the 6th go forward into a Division 3. I feel that they have tried to blend the past records, which has given them the seedings, with an element of the local derby. For instance, Yorkshire and Lancashire are in the same group, and Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire are in the same group. And there is no doubt that if the county championship is going to survive, I think this is the way forward. And if you want to call it the preliminary rounds, it's getting more like a knockout championship, really. And if you want to survive financially, you've got to have fixtures in the early rounds that will attract more spectators. I'm not saying a massive crowd because it's 4 days, you can't expect that, but will attract more spectators because possibly of the local derby interest and or the fact that there's a strong team coming to play. And I think that, so I think they've made a good fist of blending the old county championship with the undoubted success of the Bob Willis Trophy. But I have to say, 8th of April, what an early start. I feel for the spin bowlers. I mean, no wonder we've a dearth of spin bowlers. I mean, they'll have to wear gloves when they're bowling, I would suspect, the spinners. I mean, it really is a bit of a shame. But from an organisational point of view, I think it's very good. I looked then at the overseas players. I was going for who's a likely winner. I'm from Essex, and I'm delighted that Essex have won in the last couple of years, and they won the Bob Willis Trophy, somewhat fortunately against Somerset in the end. I don't think Essex will feature this year. I think I looked at the teams, and I'll go on to describe this. I think one team, one county, stands out head and shoulders above any of the others this year, and I would nearly put my house on them winning it, and that is Yorkshire. I looked at the squad. They have a phenomenal squad. They have Bairstow, Balance, Dominic Best, who's been signed as the spin bowler, which was their 1 week area, Henry Brooks, Ben Code, Cadmore, Lythe, Milan, Joe Root, some fellow called Joe Root, and they're captained by Patterson, which I think is rather good. He captained last year, but had a few back spasms and was off. And I think it is a very, very strong team in all departments, pace bowling, and now they've got Dominic Best spin bowling, very strong batting, and I see them standing out. Of the others, it's interesting to find that overseas players, Brathwaite, the West Indian captain, now has gone to Gloucester.
Yeah.
And Joseph has gone to Worcester, and Kemar Roach has gone to Surrey, as has Hashim Amla, which will boost Surrey. And I think that Surrey will possibly carry a threat. Bancroft's gone back to Durham, and Lambashang has gone again to Glamorgan. Siddle has gone to Essex, and I mean Siddle. Well, I don't know. He must be Mr. Everlasting. And Simon Harmer, of course, and then Hampshire have got two good. They've got Abbott, and they've got Mohammed Abbas, which is a ferocious opening attack. So maybe Hampshire could threaten.
Yeah.
I then looked at that, and I thought this is a possible season where we should look out for 3. I've identified 3 players who we should follow and see how they do.
Yeah.
The first, Kola Cadmore of Yorkshire, Joe Clark of Nottinghamshire, and the last one, a real possible surprise packet, is the guy from Somerset, Lamonbury, and I'll nail my colours to the mast. I think that those 3 could be a success this year, but I fancy Yorkshire to win it. I'm only very sorry that it started, in my opinion, a month too early. But of course, the other schedules have determined that.
Yes.
And the county cricket has suffered.
Yeah.
There've been a couple of other interesting moves. Borthwick has gone back to Durham.
Yeah.
Scott Borthwick, and he's gone as captain, yes. And Luke Wells has gone to Lancashire from Sussex, and Briggs has gone to Warwickshire.
Yeah.
And Jamie Overton, as you would know, has gone from Somerset to Surrey, as well as Don Best, of course, going for York. They're the significant changes. The other thing, the final thing I would say, and this, I saw Joe Root applauded this. I'm saying that this will give an advantage to the spin bowlers and help develop them. They've increased the points for a drawn game from 5 to 8. Now, I can't see the logic in this. Is it an attempt to make people bat more responsibly? I can't see it. I'm mystified by that. That's the only query that I have on the whole organisation, that they have increased the points from 5 to 8 for a draw. But
Yeah,
I look forward to it.
I can't see the changing in points, even really following the logic of that, is going to offset the fact that they're asking spinners to bowl in the middle of April. To be perfectly honest with you,
really.
I make you right about Yorkshire looking very strong. I think Somerset will probably want to have a good season as well, and they've got good young players around the squad. Again, they got to the final last time. I was again slightly more optimistic about Essex. I thought they looked good. I thought Cook will probably want to sign off in some style. He did very well last year. And I think Kent looked like not a bad side either. So there's a few teams around. I think some obviously will miss some of their IPL players early on. I think Lancashire will miss Livingston and Butler, for example. Not that Butler plays for Lancashire very often, but those guys will be missing from there. But I also had a look at some players. I picked 3 batsmen and 3 bowlers and a Middlesex player, just chucked in the mix as a Middlesex man. I also picked Tom Lammonby as maybe one to watch. He scored 100 in the second innings in the final, the Bob Willis Trophy final. In fact, got 300s in 11 innings last season. So clearly he can score runs. He was averaging. He's only 20 years old. He was averaging over 50. I think there's another young player, Jordan Cox. I think is Kent. I think he's a wicket keeper. I'm not sure if he always keeps wicket, and sometimes he just plays as a specialist batsman. He got 238 last season in one innings, and averaged nearly 65. He's also 20 years old. It'll be good to see if he can bring that form forward. Is he a class player? And somebody who's a bit more of a returning man is Ben Duckett of Nottinghamshire. Had a daffy with the England squad and even Test cricket a few years ago when he probably wasn't ready. Well, he averaged over 50 last season as well, and looks like he's found his place in Nottinghamshire. And I think could be somebody that if he has a good season could again begin to be mentioned in dispatches for the Test team. On the bowling side, I'm really interested to see how Amar Vidi does for Surrey. He's got a very good record for somebody who's only 22 years old. He took his 22 wickets last year at just under 26, so very good. I'm interested in Ed Barnard of Worcestershire. It's one of those names that's been around for the last few years. He had a good season last year. He was only 25, so this might need to be his breakthrough season if he's going to do it. He took his 18 wickets at under 22. But also, and again, a Yorkshire player who I think if he can get game time in such a strong squad, Jordan Thompson, a pace bowler, took 15 wickets at 16 last season and an economy rate of 2.3, something like that. He's 24 years old, so again, he may feel that he's due a breakout season. And then my Middlesex player.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yes.
My Middlesex player is a left-arm spinner called Thilan Walawita. Get the
Sri Lankan. Is he of extraction?
He's born in Sri Lanka, but I think he qualifies for England at some point this year. Very young, left arm spinner, and I think there's a lot of people are quite excited about his potential and what he might be able to do in the county game. So a few interesting players to look out for. We will return to county cricket as it goes on. We'll have plenty of opportunities to pause and think because there'll be a round of games and then there'll be a bit of a break and then there'll be more games later on in the year. So I think that the county championship wise, so it starts on the 9th of April. It will probably finish at something like the 28th of September or something. But there's going to be a big
Can I throw 2 more names at you then?
Please do, Tony.
I think that Ben Code of Yorkshire should be watched this year. But you talked about Ben Duckett and the returning, and one person that I had overlooked, and it was you jogged me there when you talked about Ben Duckett returning, is Hamid. Now Hamid has moved from Lancashire. He was exceptionally promising, then got injured and lost his confidence totally, has moved counties, and I will be now very interested to see how he performs this year.
Yeah, he's been made vice captain as well. He's been made vice captain as well.
Has he? I didn't know that.
Apparently, he really did impress and around the squad as well as with his performances last season. They've made him vice
Well,
captain.
looking further, I mean, if he does produce, there's an opening spot ready for him with the test team.
There may well be. Yep, there may well be. Yep, great stuff. Well, I think we've thoroughly filleted the IPL, and we've given the county championship a good going over as well. So lots to enjoy in the coming week. We're going to need a couple of tellies and a few radios to keep on top of all this cricket, Tony. But we'll do our best, and we'll check in next week and see how things have started in both these competitions.
I would leave the subject with one small point and ask cricket supporters, and with regard to the spinners, to be very patient.
Yeah.
We are looking at our spinners, and all the spinners, including Dom Bess, are very, very young. Give them a chance, guys. They're bound to be up and down and in and out. And I would ask for patience with our spinners. It's going to be hard enough for them to bowl in April and even May, especially if they're leggies. Not too bad for an off spinner, but with a leggy, I mean, it's just amazing.
Very difficult. Yeah.
Yes, I can't see the ball getting up above ankle height almost. But we shall see.
And again, a big season perhaps for Matt Parkinson and Mason Crane as well. If they have a good season and bowl well, I think England would love to have a leg spinner available for the test team. And again, we've said I wrote an article. It's up on Medium about the England test team and was very clear in the numbers. Dom Bess and Jack Leach were not England's problem. They really weren't. And unless you can find a definite step up from those guys in terms of selections for the test team, and you don't just mean a good spinner, you mean somebody who's really superb.
And let us remember, those two guys were bowling against the best players of spin in the world, because the best spinners in the world are in India. So therefore, the batsmen in India have the best experience of playing against spinners. I think they were harshly criticised by all the pundits.
And if you look at India's first innings scores in India, the only team that was able to keep them on kind of anything other than stratospheric in the last couple of years really regularly was England. England managed to keep them to a good score. And England obviously batted pretty horrendously, and it was more than well enough to win the game. But when they were playing other teams in India, India was regularly scoring very, very big scores. So England should bear that in mind too. So yeah, but lots of interest. I think as we go through the summer with the county championship, we'll be looking at top three batsmen and we'll be looking at spinners and seeing if anyone's making a case and putting their hand up. That will be interesting to look out for. So Mac, you're going to have the T20 to enjoy in India. I hope you've from our review there, you've picked a team that you're gonna want to watch, and we'll maybe see how we get on next week and see if you've had a chance to pick a favourite.
Yeah, indeed. And thank you so much, boys. That's been amazing. Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Tony. As far as picking a team, well, I'm a fair weather man, so
whoever starts,
I'll see who's winning. That's how that'll determine who I pick.
Well, at least you're honest about it, man.
Yeah, exactly. But your analysis was brilliant. So let's see if your predictions are right. If your predictions are right, obviously I'm going to go for the best team which you predicted. So we'll talk about it next week. And the county cricket, had some valid points there, boys. Really good stuff about really making it exciting and for it to survive, and brilliant stuff, boys. So thank you so much. Thank you for everybody who's watched. And where would you find you on Twitter, Steve?
Yeah, I'm at SFTV_cricket. And that's probably the easiest place to go to find my articles as well. I've got articles up about the World Test Championship, review of India's performance in it, review of England's. I'll be putting an Australia one up before the end of the week. And I've also put up a fairly long article analysing all the IPL teams. And particularly if you're doing fantasy IPL, I would recommend having a read of that, because I think there's plenty in there to help you spot some players that might be good value, who can help you get a winning fantasy team. Brilliant,
thank you, Steve. And I'll put a link in with the notes, the show notes, just so that anybody can go and have a good read of what Steve's done, because he's done quite an in-depth analysis of everything with graphs and everything like that. So, and quite thorough chat. And obviously follow Steve on Twitter. He's doing a fantastic job there, keeping us all informed on what's going on with the cricket. So thank you so much. Thank you, as always, boys. And we'll be back. We'll be back next week with updates about the IPL and the county cricket. It starts this Thursday. It's going to be interesting what happens with the county cricket. Friday, IPL. It's going to be very exciting. We love it. So thank you for watching. Thanks, boys, as always. And thank you for watching the Cricket Fan Show. And like I said, tell your friends about it. Let us know your thoughts as well. Leave some comments. And we'll see you next time.